Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into a really powerful story from the ancient text of Second Chronicles. It's all about a national crisis and a sudden, shocking spiritual revival. It's the story of a young leader who inherited a kingdom that was an absolute mess and had to figure out how to bring its very soul back to life. And really, that's the big question, isn't it? How do you fix something that broken? We're going to explore this by looking at King Hezekiah, who came to power and found that the very heart of his nation's worship, the temple, had been literally boarded up and left to rot. So picture this. Hezekiah is just 25 years old when he takes the throne, and the spiritual center of his entire kingdom, Judah, is in a state of total neglect. And this wasn't some slow, gradual decline. No, this was the direct, devastating result of what his own father had done. Right away, Hezekiah doesn't sugarcoat it. He doesn't make excuses or try to shift the blame. He stands up and, with just startling honesty, points to the root of the problem. Their own ancestors had deliberately turned their backs on God. You'll notice he never once tries to blame God for all the problems they were having. And when the text lays out the specifics, it's pretty shocking. This wasn't just, forgetting to sweep the floors. This was an active, intentional shutdown. The doors to God's house were literally locked and barred. The lamps were extinguished. They had actively turned their backs on the very place God was meant to dwell among them. Hezekiah connected the dots. He saw a straight line from this spiritual abandonment to the nation's real-world problems. Their people were being taken captive, their cities were in ruins, and he knew why. He understood the cause and effect. So what did he do about it? Okay, so check this out. In the very first month of his reign, not the first year, the first month, Hezekiah springs into action. There's no waiting around. And the first thing he does is gather the nation's spiritual leaders, the priests and the Levites. And this was his command. So simple, so direct, and just incredibly powerful. On one level, he was saying, go clean out all the actual garbage that's piled up in there. But everyone knew what he really meant. It was a call to cleanse the nation's spiritual heart. And he didn't just shout in order. He laid out this incredibly clear, logical plan for how they were going to get back on track. It was basically a three-step process. First, face the sins of the past. Second, understand that those sins have real consequences. And third, commit to a new path, a new covenant with God to turn things around. And here's the crucial part. He motivated them. He reminded them of their original mission, their divine purpose. He was basically saying, hey, remember who you are. Remember why you're here. God chose you for this. Don't be negligent in this sacred duty. So with that vision laid out, the actual work began. And the scale of the task in front of them, well, it was absolutely staggering. It took them more than 2 solid weeks of intense, hard labor. For 8 straight days, they just cleared the outer courts. And then it took another 8 days for the priests to go inside and cleanse the holy part of the temple itself. Just think about that. 16 days just to haul out all the filth that had built up over the years. And that number, 16, it just says it all, doesn't it? It really highlights how deep the desecration went. This revival wasn't just some magic switch being flipped. It took intense, focused, back-breaking effort to undo the damage of the past. But it wasn't just about cleaning out all the bad stuff. It was also about restoring what was good and holy. They went and gathered up all the sacred articles that his father, Ahaz, had literally thrown out, and they purified them, and they put them right back where they belonged, in front of the altar of the Lord. So, once the temple was physically clean, it was finally time to restore its true purpose, to be a house of worship, a place where the sound of praise could finally be heard again. Hezekiah commanded this massive sin offering, way more than the law actually required. This was a huge gesture to make atonement for the entire kingdom. It was this powerful public act of saying, we have all failed, and we need to make this right with God. And right here, this is the turning point of the whole story. The very moment that sacrifice was offered on the altar, the silence was finally broken. The song of the Lord, the sound of praise just erupted and filled the temple. It shows you just how tied together atonement and praise really are. And this wasn't some quiet, somber affair. It became this incredible, communal, joyous event. Everybody was in on it. The singers were singing these ancient psalms, the trumpets were blasting, and the entire assembly, all the people, bowed down together to honor God. But what happened next was so remarkable, so overwhelming that the text itself makes it clear that this couldn't just be chalked up to Hezekiah's great leadership. No, something much deeper was going on here. See, once the people themselves were invited to bring their own offerings, it was like a floodgate opened. This pent-up desire to worship was just unleashed. There were so many sacrifices being brought that the priests literally couldn't keep up, and the Levites had to jump in and help with the workload. I mean, just look at this contrast. It's a complete 180. The nation went from having the temple doors bolted shut under God's wrath to a people overflowing with offerings and singing praises with genuine gladness. It was a total, absolute reversal. And this, right here, is the ultimate takeaway from the whole story. The credit wasn't given to the king's amazing speech or his perfect plan. No. The reason for their joy was that they all recognized that God himself had prepared the people's hearts for this exact moment. You know, commentators on this passage point out that for a group of people who were just recently involved in idolatry to suddenly be so passionate in God's service, well, that could only be the work of God Almighty. For such a massive, joyful change to happen so fast, it just pointed to a power far greater than any human leader. And that really leaves us with a powerful thought to chew on. When you see spiritual change that seems impossibly fast and overwhelmingly positive, maybe, just maybe, it's a sign that the people involved have been uniquely and divinely prepared for it. Thank you for joining this explainer.